Continuamos con el punto 16, intercambio de puntos.
Let's continue with item 16, exchange of views with the Commission on e-cigarettes and heated tobacco. First of all, I'd like to give the floor on behalf of DG Sante, DG Health, to Mr. Andrzej Rys for 10 minutes. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for invitation to this important discussion. So let me start from the short presentation about the state of play on electronic cigarettes and heated tobacco. I hope it will go. Oh, it's coming. Okay, so as you remember, the Tobacco Product Directive became fully applicable 4 years ago in 2016, setting the rule for tobacco and related products such as e-cigarettes. It is a key piece of legislation there of tobacco control, and one of its common aims is to make tobacco and related products less attractive to young people. The directive is the first comprehensive legislation regulating e-cigarettes, and I think this is one of the first in the world. Expected outcome of the directive are to decrease tobacco consumption, strengthen the internal market, and assure the high level of health protection, particularly to young people. I think it's strange. Try to move back. Better if you do it. So why we decided to regulate electronic cigarettes? At the time the directive has been drafted, there was a strong need to regulate e-cigarettes. There were different rules across EU. For example, 40 member states reported that they regard some electronic cigarettes as medical products by function. Others had regulated them under tobacco legislation, and 9 others had no specific rule in place. There was also strong market growth and substantial public health concerns. As you can see, just few of them, like misleading information, lacking information, like long-term effects, some quality issues. There were just few of them. We basically make us work and trigger this approach. Prevalence of use of electronic cigarettes is quite significant. With 15, I'm referring to the Eurobarometer studies from 2017, 12 people having tried to use electronic cigarettes according to these studies. The figure is even higher for young people, with 25% of 15 to 24 years old trying to use electronic cigarettes. And this is also a phenomenon is seen in the United States when during last decades was very big reduce of cigarettes consumption, but now they really see the similar phenomena in the high school students, using more electronic cigarettes. I know many of you are concerned with the safety of electronic cigarettes. Just a few months ago, we have seen the US serious adverse incidents linked to electronic cigarette use, which triggers strong public health measures in the US coordinated by 2 US agencies, US FDA and CDC Atlanta. So how we regulate electronic cigarettes? While the EU also has seen adverse incidents linked to use of electronic cigarettes, which we continue to closely monitor, we can be proud that the Tobacco Product Directive has stringent provision and strong framework for electronic cigarettes. For example, vitamin E excited, which has been implicated in the US case, is banned in the EU. The directive prohibits use of vitamin or other additives that create the impression of healthy benefits. We also have strong restrictions limiting nicotine concentration to 20 milligrams per milliliter. The directive also introduced a prior notification which requires for manufacturers and importers to notify the product to the competent authority 6 months before placing it on the market. The directive does not harmonize all aspects surrounding electronic cigarettes. Many of those we are learning during last years. For example, the use of cannabis extracts such as CBD is not harmonized on the EU level. In additional product safety, the popularity of cigarettes amongst young people continues to be particular concern. Much of this success has been attributed to the wide variety of flavors available. The directive gives scope of member states to go beyond provision and introduce flavor bans of electronic cigarettes, which one member state has already done and others are planning to do so. Member states may also enhance awareness at national level through their own campaigns. Several member states have strengthened information provision following reports on adverse incidents from the US. Now a few words about heated tobacco products in the TPD. Heated tobacco products contain, contrary to electronic cigarette tobacco leaves, and regulated accordingly. The TPD introduced specific procedures for so-called novel tobacco products where they are subject to prior notification or authorization by the competent authorities. As many of you are aware, so-called menthol ban comes into force 20th of May this year, where menthol cigarettes and roll your own tobacco will not longer be permitted on the EU market in accordance with the provision of the directive. While heated tobacco products are fully covered by the directive, they are not currently exempted from this provision. Heated tobacco, what they bring, this new novel tobacco product. Aware of the market potential, the Commission is monitoring those products carefully and gathering scientific information. Recently, we have observed third-party heated devices entering the market, which may impact considerably the emission profile of marketed tobacco products. Those devices are often advertised in many member states. Frequently, those products are not in scope of national smoke-free regulations on non-smokers, including children, are exposed to their secondary hand emissions. Within the EU and internationally, several misleading messages have been promoted about those products, presenting them as better alternatives, which challenging many regulators. Last year, during FCTC, the COP decision, the COP8 decision initiated by the EU, it was requested an assessment of the products, which this will be reported in a few months' time to so-called COP9, which will happen this year in Netherlands. There is a need to adopt the wording of all the FCTC guidelines with aim to prevent circumvention of comprehensive application of the FCTC. So have a look at the last two slides about the work we are doing now to help to understand all these phenomena. As you remember, in the directive, Commission is required to report to the Parliament and Council by May 2021 the report from the implementation of the directive. We are in the preparatory phase, and you can see a number of issues we have to assess, including electronic cigarettes and refill containers, but also novel products and electronic cigarettes as from the market development. So we are gathering data through different sources of information. We do this through expert groups of member states working together to join actions. We'll do Eurobarometer studies during this year. We also ask scientific opinion on electronic cigarettes and product perception study looking into electronic cigarettes and heated tobacco products. And finally, the scientific opinion of SCARE, the Scientific Committee on Health, Environmental and Emerging Risk. Committee was asked focus on electronic cigarettes in the effects, but also the cessation and initiating elements. You know, there are areas we would like to understand better, and we hope this will be published for the public consultation in a few weeks' time, and opinion will be concluded by September, October this year, and will provide additional information to the report we would like present to you as European Parliament in the Council as well. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, señor Rys. Tiene ahora la palabra.
Thank you very much, sir. I would first like to give the floor to Ms. McGuinness. Go ahead. McGuinness.
Much, Chair, and thanks to the Commission for what is a very useful presentation of the state of play. I have been asking questions about this issue, and of course we're all aware of what's happening in the United States, so it's good that the European Union's directive has dealt with the issue of e-cigarettes, but not completely. One of the statistics that was quite interesting from the presentation was the number of young people that are vaping. And I suppose what would be interesting to know, and perhaps you have this information, is whether these are their first experience, so that they may not have been smoking cigarettes, but they immediately start vaping because it's now acceptable perhaps within their group to do that. It would be interesting to know if that is the case. Clearly what happened in the United States was extremely worrying. I am aware that some aspects of this directive are within the remit of the member state, and is that something we need to look at, that we have better harmonisation of issues, as you mentioned, CBD, for example, flavours, etc. Is that something that we need to take a position on now, given the information we have here? Or are there any other aspects of the evidence we have found in relation to custom and practice on vaping that would guide us to make changes? And will this come in the report perhaps that is due next year? I think it's fascinating how rapidly vaping happened, almost overnight. And is this the tobacco industry's form of diversification? Do we have information on that? There was this week, or rather last week, an interesting research report from an Irish maternity hospital, which found that women who vaped, their baby size was the same as those who never smoked or had engagement with cigarettes. This is not to say that we would be promoting vaping to pregnant women, but it goes to show that there is research being carried out in different member states on vaping. And do we have any way of coordinating that research and getting the results fed into the process and the work that's taking place at the Commission? I'm very grateful that we've had this discussion and presentation, because I do think we need to have a close eye on what's happening on the ground, because none of us would have predicted that 25% of young people were vaping. That's not a statistic that I didn't think it would be this high. And we do need to know the impacts on all sections of society, and those areas where we're not clear on the additions, the flavours, the impact of these. So the risk assessment report would be very important. It's rather a shame, though, that we have to wait for, I suppose, fieldwork, actual vaping, to guide us in our risk assessment, but I'm not sure it could be any other way. But certainly we need that information, and we need it soon. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, señora McGuinness.
Thank you, Ms. McGuinness. Mr. Liese, go ahead.
Ja, vielen Dank, Herr Vorsitzender.
Thank you, Chairman. Let me also thank the Commission for the presentation, but I have a request for the Commission. Either you, sir, or someone else. Can you explain to me what actually happened in the USA? We're interested by what's happened, and now this is going to lead to a consultation. But maybe DG Sante can explain and understand what happened. Why have so many people been harmed by e-cigarettes? And do we have rules that ensure that won't happen in Europe? Months have passed since that incident. 3 months ago we had a survey sent out by the ENVI Secretariat. Now we need to have an answer. So I want to hear from the Commission. Maybe others in the room can also explain. Or maybe others have followed what's happened online and have some information available. That's a really important question. In our health working group this afternoon, we were talking about avoidable risks or avoidable factors which can lead to cancer. It seems that 50% of cancer cases are caused by smoking. We don't know that e-cigarettes can cause cancer, though. But if we want to deal with cancer, maybe we can get heavy smokers to switch to e-cigarettes. And then if that is a possibility, we shouldn't make it easier to make that switch. We should make it easier. We shouldn't make it harder, we should make it easier, excuse me. But then we also need to ensure that young people and children don't start smoking or vaping. Now, I think we have plenty of time, Chairman, so please let me actually say something. So it seems that 50% of cancer cases can be traced back to smoking. So if it is possible to reduce the risk by a large amount, by getting people to switch to e-cigarettes, there's no proof that e-cigarettes yet causes cancer. I mean, we need to do more research. But at the same time, there might be other health risks associated with vaping. So there's my question. What happened in the US? Is that under control? Or does swift, urgent action need to be taken? Thank you.
Muchas gracias, señor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Liese. We do have time on our hands, and so we will allow the rest of the people on the speakers list to express their views, and I'm now going to take the floor and lead by example. Now, we've seen a crisis of the last months with several people dying from vaping over in the US, but also one in Belgium. We've seen rates going from 1.5% of youth vaping to almost 25% in my country, in Spain. A report from the Ministry of Health recently reported that almost half of youth between 14 and 18 have tried these e-cigarettes. Only 2 years ago, it was only 1 in 5. The World Health Organization has, on several occasions, warned against these products because they are harmful and they do induce people to smoking. And it seems that European legislation is not adapted to this reality. On the 20th of September, the Tobacco Working Group expressed by broad consensus that liquids containing CBD may create the impression that a product is beneficial to health. There is a legal void here because CBD is not covered by the Tobacco Products Directive. And another working document on the 2011 Directive on Taxes on Tobacco Products, the Commission itself has declared that this directive is no longer fit for purpose because it was drafted in other times, and it now needs to take into account all aspects of fighting tobacco use, including public health, tax, but also the new European agenda of fighting cancer. And so we need new regulation on tobacco products that also cover non-nicotinoid products. Now, I would also like to know whether the Commission foresees modifying the existing regulations in line with the voids and the modernization needs already highlighted in all these documents, and whether you foresee also looking into the loopholes at member state level and the use of liquids without any nicotine. Now, Ms. Trillet-Lenoir. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will take the floor in the name of my colleague Andrzej Rys, who has been shadow rapporteur on the Tobacco Products Directive, and she urged to draw questions to the Commission. But first of all, little remark on possible toxic effect of any product. Talking about cancer, the date where you can suspect a toxic effect of a product is approximately 10 years after you've used it. So it might be a reason why we have right now no information, and maybe we should not commercialize a product after having 10 years of experimentation, but that's the way it goes. So the 4 questions on Frédéric's behalf are: could the Commission confirm that no European cases similar of lung illnesses to those found in the USA have been reported amongst the member states, except for the Belgium case I'm pretty well aware of? Concerning the risk of e-cigarettes posed to non-smokers who start to use them, is the Commission ready to take new initiatives over the next few months to prevent the tobacco industry's systematic targeting of younger and younger people? Could the Commission confirm studies, for instance, the one from the Public Health England, that show that in Europe, flavored e-cigarettes have contributed to a recent decline in adult smoking? And the final one, is, as the Commission will report on the implementation of the Tobacco Products Directive in 2021, can you confirm that the balanced European approach will remain in force, namely to consider vaping devices as an efficient tool for stopping tobacco consumption and less harmful alternative to the traditional cigarette? Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Ms. Trillet-Lenoir. We now hear from Ms. Beigneux from ID. Benoit.
A la tercera.
C'est pas grave. Monsieur le Président, mes chers...
Chairman, colleagues, the consumption of tobacco has decreased by 6% according to the Eurobarometer. The magazine Addiction showed that electronic cigarettes is a way to give up traditional smoking. In France, electronic cigarettes have been banned since April 2016 in some public spaces such as schools. We welcome the strengthening of this position, which goes in the right direction. Now, as we look at the liquid which is burned, there are many liquids which aren't in line with EU rules which circulate in the EU. They can lead to poison, people being poisoned and intoxicated. I want to talk about the Boudaboo drug. This is a drug that is basically a synthetic CBD. It's already led to the death of several European people. And I have various questions. What is the Commission going to do to ensure that there are checks on products coming into the Schengen area? How will it also deal with the sales of the Boudaboo drug that I've mentioned? Thank you.
Gracias, señora.
Thank you, Madame. Now, Ms. Rivasi from the Greens. Thank you. As the Commission stated earlier, it's important to draw a line between heated tobacco and electronic cigarettes. They're two different products. Heated tobacco contains tobacco, unlike e-cigarettes. So you have to apply the same tax rules to heated tobacco and the same health rules. So we can follow the Lithuanian example to what's happening with the liquid and the e-cigarettes. And this is essential. But I want to know what the Commission has in the pipeline in the coming months. What's also interesting to know is the link between e-cigarettes and health. I remember that there was a debate in 2014 on the European Tobacco Directive. I raised the alarm and said, well, don't just think that the e-cigarette is harmless. I said we didn't know anything about the chemical additives that were being used. I said there might be residues linked to burning, I said there might be combined synergistic effects. Now I've been meeting with professionals from the sector who say, we didn't know what we were talking about. I want to know what the true consequences, the true impacts of these products are. So I want this directive to be much more draconian because we've been very lax in the authorization of products. The Commission has said that it is awaiting a scientific opinion. Well, I mean, look at the number of people who've fallen ill. There are 2,409 people who have fallen ill in the US. There have been deaths, casualties in the US, and there's been this Belgian case. Now, why did we have this tobacco directive? Why did we come up with it? We wanted to reduce tobacco consumption among young people. But what are we doing now? Now we have these really nice, sexy aromas and flavorings that are being used in e-cigarettes to lure young people in. We don't have flavorings for traditional cigarettes, but we do allow e-cigarette manufacturers to use flavorings and aromas. You yourself have said it. 25% of young people have tried vaping. Now, if someone wants to quit smoking, okay, but does that really help people? I want to see the studies on it. But what we're doing here with young people is really not a good idea. I think you need to be stricter. And look at the US. Now they are banning the use of aromas and flavorings. The Commission has to follow the same route if we want to get young people away from these e-cigarettes. And now you're leaving this up to the member states. I look at France. France is the second biggest user of vape cigarettes after the US. In France, there are two problematic molecules that are used in the liquids for e-cigarettes. One is diacetyl and pentanedium. France has banned the first one because it was believed that this molecule could lead to lung problems. Yet you've left it up to the member states. I mean, France, luckily, does boast agencies and health experts. But nevertheless, you're encouraging the use of these products. I therefore ask the Commission, what stricter measures are you going to take without awaiting the revision of the tobacco directive? You should ban aromas and flavorings in these e-cigarettes. I think you've got to be really strict on this. We also need additional studies on the additives used. In addition, you can use rechargeable liquids, but we need to have these. We have to have a framework for this. I really think we have to have stricter rules. In France, you can't have blends or mixtures, and you also have to check what's happening online because there's a lot of these mixtures or blends online. Thank you.
Gracias, señora Rivasi. No hay
Thank you, Ms. Rivasi. So we want to hear from the Commission, but from the ECR, Mr. Fiocchi.
Mr. Chair, thank you very much for the possibility of talking. I'm an engineer, so I would like to have some better dates. I've read 24 different academic studies on the issue of vaping and other form of smoking. And in reality, what I can say is that there is everything and the opposite of everything. So before we take a decision, I would like to have a real scientific study regarding what is this issue. Can we use this to reduce smoking, or is this an actual danger for the teenager that use this to start using the vaping and everything else and get actually in trouble from a physical point of view? So I would like to see the Commission to start a real scientific study on this issue. Thank you.
Gracias, señor Fiocchi.
Thank you very much. Finally, we have the S&D group, Ms. Schaldemose.
Translation today, so I will speak in English. First of all, I realize that it can be maybe difficult to make a decision in the Commission on how to act in this area due to lack of real solid scientific documentation on the consequences. However, I have to say that a lot of the European cancer societies, they are in fact recommending a much stronger approach to e-cigarettes and heated tobacco. Doesn't that make any kind of impression in the Commission in order to consider a stronger approach? I realize that you have left it up to the member states to do things here, but wouldn't it be better also due to, first of all, health questions, but also for the internal market to have a common European approach and have a stronger approach, even base that approach on the precautionary principle and start banning e-cigarettes. And then later on, if we have better knowledge, then we can maybe open up again if it shows that there are no negative health impacts. So my question is, does it make an impression to you that the cancer societies throughout Europe recommend a stronger approach to this? Thank you.
Gracias, señora.
Thank you very much, Ms. Schaldemose. Now we'll hear from the Commission. Mr. Rys again.
Thank you very much. I will do my best to answer a number of concerns raised by a member of parliament. So let me start maybe answering first to Ms. Gutholm. So when you when you see statistics, of course, you know we base on the barometer study from 2017, and there was a question was asked about the use of electronic cigarettes by young people. So most probably when we are reflecting now on the final questions for the barometer 2020. So this question, you know, this is the first time you use only electronic cigarettes, or this was maybe they were experimenting with cigarettes and electronic cigarettes together. So this maybe we can try to clarify with researchers how we can address better this question. There is as we know, the history of this directive, the first Commission proposal was much more restrictive, I may say, concerning the electronic cigarettes, with more measures on the EU level. And we went through the whole process, and we end up with the solutions we have now in place, which is a mixture of harmonization on the EU level with the, of course, availability of measures by member states, and I think the incident or situation crisis in the US triggered a number of member states to take this a little bit much more stronger than before. So we see already as already mentioned, the discussion about the banning of flavors, it's going on. One country did this. We see that maybe 2-3 are coming in few months. We see also the quite interesting activities concerning, for example, messages to parents and school and teachers explaining basically what is the electronic cigarettes as a product and what can create to children or young people. At the same time, we have seen also some new idea about the packaging, taxation. So it's an ongoing process. On the research, you know, we try hard, you know, to in one hand, you know, the scientific committee, what they are doing now, they try to get as many evidence as possible from all available sources, from EU researchers, from member states, base research, from our cooperation with US FDA, from Japan. So we really are building, you know, the evidence, you know, and of course this issue is not problem in Europe, but around the globe. Simultaneously, WHO, FCTC Secretariat also are triggering the similar exercise. So evidence is built, and we may see in hopefully in near future. Because also answering to a number of other questions, you know, this balance evidence, you know, what is working, what is not working, is remember one of the questions we asked to the scientific committee about the cessation. So it's better way to quit smoking because of electronic cigarettes. This evidence also has to be checked because there are many articles and studies, but there's not one conclusive which we can base our decision in future. Of course, in our decisions, Commission is implementing what was agreed by Council and Parliament, the Commission finally. So we have the framework. We do what we have on our plate. We of course assess the situation in the U.S. Answering also to Dr. Liese. So according to the U.S. study, when around the beginning was not very clear now how to assess those cases, because the clinical evidence in the beginning was also very difficult to agree by clinicians, how this is linked to the product or to other situations. And finally, the conclusion is that most probably the results in lung problems were resulted by a combination of the use of vitamin in the liquids, but also some cannabis in this simultaneously. So this was also the size of the containers were different. In Europe we are regulating. We are basically not allowing to use the big containers, which of course was the situation before regulation was put in place. So the US continued to do the additional work to understand better this. In Europe, we trigger our also alert system to see if we can define evidence. In one hand, that we have RAPEX system, which is by definition controlling the consumer goods, and this was not notification in RAPEX. We use also our system which is used for the health incidence control for health threats. This was no notification. The Belgium case was imported from the US, if I may say so. So this was the patient which was using this product in the US, as I understand. So we had some suspect cases, but there was not confirmed in the clinical assessment. So in answer, we don't have the similar situation in the US. Most probably there are different, many other reasons we couldn't really research. So what kind of loopholes in the member states? Member states are implementing this regulation. Everyone is doing this, its way, but at the same time they have chance to meet together. We have expert group and also joint actions when experts can exchange information about the way they are implementing different provisions of the legislation, not just for electronic cigarettes, but also for heated tobacco, but other areas like placement of tobaccos or advertisement and so on, so smoke-free environment. So we try to make sure that there is exchange of knowledge across continent, allowing also learn from each other and use the provision of legislation to make this possible. But at the same time, of course, we try to research, how tobacco consumption and the whole market looks like. Just give you a number, in the database which is established under this directive, we have 253,000 notification of the products, because we are speaking not only about electronic cigarettes, but many other devices that are produced by different companies to be used or in combination with those products. So it's a relatively huge market with very many variations. So we would like to know about how this product can access single market. As I explained, every company which is placing product on the market should notify this to the authority in advance, 6 months in advance. So it's not possible to start to sell this product without information, but also they provide additional information on the products, of course, and member states they have rights to assess, what is in product or ask additional questions, especially novel tobacco. They may ask additional evidence from the company, what is known to the company from studies companies have done. So this, we know that it's happening in the member states already. To Madam Rivasi question of the heated tobacco is a tobacco product. It's not electronic cigarettes. I think it's important to say this because often in the taxation classification, after whole discussion in the International Committee of Tax Officers, they decided finally to have this under electronic cigarette, the same group as electronic cigarettes. This is why we also triggered this question through FCTC and COP to really understand, what is the combustion product, what is this product, and then we really would like to get the answer from FCTC Secretariat by summer and understand better the nature of this product. Also to harmonize the global knowledge and global evidence concerning the heated tobacco and novel product. Could be directive more restrictive, and also Madam Sandemas asked, can we ban and wait? There are countries, they decided to ban electronic cigarettes, for example. I think India is one of those, which basically said we ban, but of course, it's a different process. I don't think in this moment of time, first we don't have this in our legislation. This is something which also should base on proportionality and other measures. Can we move quicker with member states? It's from the Commission side, our role is to be guardian of legislation, act in the emergency situation, but also bring knowledge to the member states and share knowledge across member states. This is what we are doing. We feel that member states are now much more interested to act. Most probably, situation in the US was an additional trigger, but final decisions, about what to do should base on the evidence we'll be able to gather in the next few months. As I said, we still believe that we'll be able to send a report of the implementation of the directive to you by next spring, and hopefully there'll be enough evidence to have discussion about what to do next. Thank you very much.
Muy bien, pues gracias.
Thank you, Mr. Rys, and to all those who took the floor on this item. We'll move on to items 17 and 18, which we'll be looking at together.